everyone. I'm Karen Combs and welcome to FlossTube number 16. It is June 30th when I'm taping on Friday, and I'll be uploading this probably overnight, so you'll have it for July 1st. It's hard to know that, realize it's already July, but I want to thank you for joining me. Thank you to all those who are returning. Thank you to the new viewers. Thank you for those that subscribe or give that thumbs up to the video. It is so much appreciated. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love reading your comments, and in fact, we're going to talk about a few of them today. But what I have today is I have a finish. I have a new start. I have some whips. I posted on Instagram, what should I start next? So you'll see what that new start is. We have a couple tutorials. I have a demo. So I've got a table full of stuff again to show you, but it's been 2 weeks since, I'm just getting my iPad here. It's been 2 weeks since I came to you the last video. And I guess I should say this, I'm backtracking. This channel is my YouTube channel, Karen Combs Studio, where we talk about quilting, we talk about different tutorials for quilting, but we also talk about stitching. So this is a FlossTube video about stitching. So now, I did not have that written down. That's why I backtrack. Usually I have an outline I follow, and I didn't write that one down. But what I've been doing last few weeks, it's been really busy. I'll show you a few pictures because I have been working in my garden. And if you follow me on Instagram, I do post those. So the zinnias are blooming. Oh, they're so gorgeous. There's some zinnias in with some tomatoes. And I think there's some basil in that one too. And look at this zinnia. So beautiful. And I don't have a big garden. It's a raised bed garden. Here's kind of an overview of it, but it's big enough for me. And so I don't get too much reflection of what's on the table. But you can see we live on a hillside, and looks flat, but that's the only flat spot in our whole yard because it goes from the street. It just keeps going up to the top of the hill. And there's one little flat spot, and that's where my raised bed garden is. And the soil's pretty poor there because it is the top of a hill, or almost the top. So that's why we do raised bed. But I've also been doing some canning, which I started. I did it when the kids were little, but started back in 2020 when my work, rather than traveling to quilt guilds to teach, it switched to teaching virtually. So I was home, still working, but home. So I started canning again, and I've continued that. So this weekend, I did about 7 quarts of refrigerator pickles. And in fact, this morning, I did 2 more quarts of what I picked from the few cucumber plants I have this morning. Did those, and then also took a trip down to Etheridge, Tennessee, which is about 30 miles from us. A big Amish community. So I go down there and buy vegetables when I need to do canning in quantities, because I'm growing a few vegetables for us to eat. But for canning, I usually go down there and get that. So I did some green beans. So there is the finished product. I'll move these papers so you can see it. And that's the Pinterest view of it. Now I'm going to show you what a kitchen actually looked like when it was all done. So here's all the dishes that needed to be cleaned up afterwards. So did that, plus some stitching. Let me just show you my book of days. So I think I've got it pretty much filled in. So here it is. And I don't have very many stickers for July, just a couple, but I love the ones. I love that one. So I've got just a few in there. So that's the book of days. I'm going to keep it close because in case I need to look at what that new start was. So that's what I've been doing for the last few weeks besides stitching. I've got some virtual teaching I'll be doing this fall, but for the summer, I'll be mostly working in the garden, and canning. In fact, we'll start doing, or I will start doing tomatoes probably in about 3 weeks, maybe 4, just depending on when they come in. Some are coming in right now, but I like to do them more in July into August. I think they're a little juicier. We usually do salsa, tomato juice, tomatoes, and we use them all year. So I just had a thought. I have an excellent refrigerator pickle recipe. It's one of my favorites. And if you would like it, put it in the comments. And then what I'll do is share it next time in the description. Or this time. If enough of you say, yeah, share that, I'll put it in the description. So let me just write a note. And I don't have my red pen, which we've talked about that as my action. Do this. Thought I had everything laid out. But if you would like that recipe, I love doing refrigerator pickles. They're crisper. They'll keep for a while in the refrigerator. I try to just use make enough that we'll use up within a year. I have a refrigerator that is in the basement that's for extra things, and that's where I usually keep them. And they're still good, but I don't like to go much after that. So let me know if you'd like that recipe. So now back to stitching. So we had some really good comments this last time. I wanted to mention KC was talking, mentioned that when I was showing the Z lamp, I mentioned that I got it from Hobby House. And I mentioned Hobby House, but she reminded me that the attic also has this lamp if you're in the US. So Hobby House and the attic have these Z lights. So I wanted to mention that. Thank you, Casey, for that. And Monica, we talked about last time about stitching on linen, and Monica was mentioning about stitching on higher counts. How do you get the holes opening? Should you use a hoop or Q-snap? And yes, that is an excellent way to open it up. Some people do Q-snap because, you know, you can pull it tighter, and when I'm done stitching, I always loosen that tension. Some of you have the I don't have one, but it's the roller frame that gets it really tight. They're from the UK. I cannot remember the name of them, but those are excellent. Hoops are excellent. I want to show you some hoops that I use. I got this one from the attic, and it is a 3-inch spring hoop, and they come in different sizes as well. But this one Jean recommended to me because it will open up the linen. And when I ordered my supplies for Harriet Salt, and I was speaking to Carolyn on the phone, Jean heard her and mentioned that I might like this. So I had her send that as well with my order. So the spring form works, so do wooden hoops. Try it and see. I have several, and I vary back and forth with them. I'm gonna set this over here, just depending on what I need. So I have several. So Monica, that was a good question and suggestion about using a hoop. And Stitch Addict was in the comments mentioned about converting threads. And in one of my earlier floss tubes, I think it was either 3 or 4, might have been 2. I didn't look that one up, but I have a demo that I did on different conversion tables, where if you're taking DMC and want to convert it to, say, weeks, or if you're using something else, want to convert it. I'm just thinking it's a link. I will put a link in the description. I will mention what video that is. So I'll do that, but 1-2-3 Stitch also has some excellent conversion charts. So here's a question for all of you. What is your favorite conversion link? Because there are many out there. So if you would put in your comment what your favorite conversion link is, then in the next video, I will share all those in the description. So that's a little I guess not really task, but just a help, because I know that there's going to be charts out there that you will know about that I may not, or I may know about, and some of you like, oh, that's a new one. So share that, and then we'll help each other with that, because converting from, say, DMC to a hand-dyed, or from a silk to a hand-dyed, or from DMC to silk, there's a lot of charts, and sometimes we want to work with one or the other, and those charts are very helpful for us. I'm not going to do that one just yet. I had Anne ask about my box over there, my DMC box, and how did I organize? So that was another good question. I'm just going to bring that up. So here is a close-up just of my DMC box. And in the last video, I put a direct link to where I purchased it. I think she mentioned she purchased hers directly from France. So that's another option, going to the DMC website in France. But the question was, how do I organize it? Do I do it by number, or do I do it by color? I do it by number because my intent was to use that, so whenever I'm kitting something, I will pull from it, and then I make a note of the colors I pulled. Then when I go to Hobby Lobby or Michael's or somewhere that has DMC, the next time I'll take that list and I'll rebuy it and restock it, so that chest always has a full collection, so whenever I pull, I know that number will be here. So mine are done by number, but that's why. So here's just a picture of that. So it helps me when I'm pulling for kitting something. So that was a good question, Anne. Thank you for that. And Anne also asked about the red boxes I had behind me, which you'll notice I don't have right now because they're right here. So I wanted to show you close up, and I think in one of the videos I did last fall, I actually showed these when I purchased them, so you can see, but I want to show you again. So there are two sets that I have normally sitting beside me. This is the Leatherology set, and the first one I started with was this size. It's, I think it's, I don't know if it's the large, because this is, oh, did I just dump all those? Seriously? Yep. Oh, I did not zip it. Well, this is the small, and in a minute you'll see what's in it, but some of them are on the floor, so oh well. But this is either the medium or the large, so it's either small or large or small or medium. This one I purchased first because it will fit a 4-inch hoop. I'm just gonna grab my 3-inch so you can see. And I actually keep this one right in front of me when I'm stitching now, because I have set it up with just a few, you know, little things, pretty things to look at, needle minders. But down inside, you can see there's a 3-inch hoop with lots of room. And then I'll have just the things I use all the time, scissors, needle threader, highlighter if I need to mark something. So I just keep those in there. But this is also the one that I usually put in my tote bag when I travel, because, well, there's two actually, but this is the one I use quite often. And then the small one, which the demo is gonna be a little different because all the spools are on the floor. This one will fit 10 of the spools. So you can see right now there's 4. The other 6 are all around my feet. But this one I purchased later, seeing someone at Sampler Symposium had this and showed me how 10 spools will fit in there. So now I'm gonna zip it. Should have done that before. So this is what you usually see on the back, but a lot of times I'm using this, and these are great to travel with or just use at the house. But then there's 2 more cases that you will see, which I pulled this, and they stack up like this behind me. And these are the hand and lock cases. Now the big one has room for a lot of different things. You've got the scissors up here. You could put threads in here that lifts up. You could even put some more tools on the other side of that. And what I really like too is these are secure. So when I open it up, I have some pins or needles in the little pin cushion there. And then I also have, look at this, some spools fit down in there. And because it closes and latches, then it won't move around. So I'm just gonna latch that so you can see. So this is another very nice case. I haven't used this one as much as I have the Leatherology, but I do have this one from Hand and Lock, which I love. This one I use all the time. A lot of times if I'm going to a stitch group, this fits perfectly what I need to take with me. So what I've got, let me unzip it. If you open it up, you can put some needle minders right here if you would like. There's a little tab, so you can just lift it up, and so I have some scissors there, but then also down in here, I can put needles. I can put the little brush, whatever I need. Usually I have some more things in there. And what I like is it closes up, and it's just in this little tiny case. So it's perfect for when I'm going somewhere for the day and just need a few items. I can even slip a little Ort container. I have a little fabric one that folds up. That can go in there. So this is the small, I think it's just called an embroidery case, sewing case by Hand and Lock. So those are the cases that are usually behind me. And thank you, Anne. That was a really good question. And Michelle asked about the glasses that I was talking about last week. I got those at Amazon, talking about in the last video. Got them from Amazon, and the link for that is in FlossTube 15. So they usually come 4 to 5 to a set. I'm not sure if you can get mixed strengths, but I usually just get the set, and a couple of ladies in my stitch group, we trade them, or just, here, I'll buy them and you give me $5 and here's your pair, because we can get like 3 or 4 for $15. So those I get on Amazon, and the link is in last FlossTube's episode. And then I had a question about, from Susan Hayward, about the silk that's on the floor. I have some right here too. So the silk that I was showing, the 103, what brand is that? So this is, let me get it up here, a Ver As Soie. ACCES Commodities is the company, and a Ver As Soie is the brand, but there are 3 different, not strengths, weights, 3 different weights. So this is Soie d'Agé, and I will put this, I'm just looking for my linen. Let me grab that. So there are 3 different weights. This one, the Soie d'Agé, is in a hank. You can see right here. Let's see if I can get the name. There we go. And this one is a little bit thicker. 32 count, 36 count, even 40 count. A lot of people use that. So that's a good weight for that. Then they have, this is the 103. And you'll know, and it's still a Ver As Soie, but you'll know it's 103. It's on the spool, and then there's the number. This one is excellent for 40 count and 46 count. Now that's over 2. If you start doing over 1, you might want to go, let's say you're using 40 count of this over 2, but you want to switch to over 1, you might want to go to the 103. So it's a little bit finer. And then the third one they have is Surfine. And let me show you what that looks like. get the name. And here it is, and it's very fine. You'll notice the 103 and the Surfine both come on the spools, but I wanted to show you on the 56 count how it looks. Now, I did not use this on the 56 count. It would be too thick. So I used, in the lighter red, I used 103, and in the darker red, I used Surfine. Now you can see the coverage. So this is Harriet Salt on 56 count. And I decided to do the letters of our name on the different lines. So the first line are my initials, and then I skip a line, and then the third line are my husband's initials. So I decided to do those on the finer Surfine. So those are the three, let's see if I can hold this up, the three different weights of a Ver As Soie. And I will put that in the description so you can see how it's spelled. Now, if any of you, excuse me, if any of you, where can I put this so I don't dump it on the floor? If any of you are on Facebook and are doing the Hannah Campbell stitch along, Kathy Ray of Needle in a Haystack has an excellent visual of taking each, well, she did DMC and then the three different Ver As Soie on different counts, over 2 and over 1. It's an excellent tutorial. So if you're in the Hannah Campbell stitch along, be sure to look at the photos and look at Kathy Ray's picture of that, because that helped me see the coverage, because it is subjective. Some people use one weight on different linen. Some people want to switch to a different weight. That will depend on what the coverage you like is. So she did that tutorial, and it was excellent. So let me see, I've got 2 more things to show you about our questions. So I had the question from several people, from Philemon and also from Elaine. How do you start on linen? What do you do? So I'm going to put a little demo in here, but before I did that, I wanted to mention something that I find very helpful when you're making a switch from Aida to linen, or maybe a lower count linen like Lugana, and you want to go to a higher count linen. 2 things I found helpful. One is, well, the hoop will open up those threads so you can see. That's personal choice, because some of you may want to stitch in hand. But one thing I found extremely helpful is to use a lighter linen. By lighter, I mean color. So you can see the linen threads. And that's what I did on Harriet Salt. It's I think it's Weeks Parchment, but it's 56 count. Maybe it's Legacy. Don't remember. But you can see it's light, and it's much easier to see the holes. When I started Hannah Campbell, I had picked a hand-dyed linen that was very saturated with color. And sometimes in the process of hand-dyeing the linen, the threads will shrink up a little bit. So I had to switch to something that I could see a little better, which was a lighter color, and I'll show that in a minute. So a lighter color linen, and the other, not the other option, but something I found very helpful too, is if you want the look of a hand-dyed linen, but maybe you don't want where the threads have shrunk up a little bit, Vintage Country Mocha, which a lot of you, we all use that. It's very readily available. This is kind of a fun linen because it does have the look of a hand-dyed, but it's not hand-dyed, it's printed. Here's the back, which is flat, meaning there's not any modeling on it, which you could use the back of it. But if you want the modeling effect, use the front. And see if I can get close. It's printed rather than dyed. So the weave is a little bit more open. Let me see if I can put that up there so you can see the weave. So vintage country mocha, that's an option, or a lighter colored linen. ACCES Commodities makes some beautiful linens that are colors, but not necessarily modeled. So that's another option. So let me, see, I'm just checking mine. I've got like 3 different pages of notes. So the question was from Philemon and Elaine, how do you start? Because when you start on Aida, usually you're using 2 strands and do the loop method and go on. But I want to share with you a little tutorial on one of the things that I use when I start. Not necessarily the only thing, but this is my go-to. So I'm going to put the video right in here. I'm going to stop this so I can insert the other video, and I'll be back on the other side. Let's take a look at a way to start your stitching, especially when you are using linen. If you're used to using Aida or using 2 strands, you might just start with a loop and go from there. But if you're using linen and using just 1 strand, it can be a little difficult to figure out how to start. So I want to show you one of my go-to methods. It's called a waist knot. And what that means is we're going to knot the thread, and we'll just pretend that these are our linen pieces. We're going to go down, and I'll demonstrate this with the linen in just a minute, but we're going to go down. So we're just going to go down into the linen from the top, travel over, and then come up a little ways away. And as we stitch, we will catch the ends, or catch this, I guess it is an end, catch this under our stitches, and then cut that away. Now I'm going to be going down from the right, coming up on the left, and going this way. That could be reversed if you like to stitch in this direction. So let me show you that. I'm going to stop this video and have the hoop ready to show you. Okay, we're going to put a knot into that end, and it's kind of a fun way to do it. I take my needle, and here's the end of my thread. I grab it with the needle. So I grabbed it in my right hand with the needle, and I wrap it 3 times. Now I'm going to grab it with my fingers and pull it all the way to the end, and there's our knot. So now what I'm going to do is, let's say I want to start over here somewhere, and usually I do 4 or 5 stitches away. You can kind of eyeball it, but I'm going to go down. Now this is where you need to be careful. When you see that knot, stop. All right, now I'm going to come up. Let's come right here so you can see. Come up now. Don't get overzealous and tug on this because you'll pull the knot down. So now I'm going to go and do my stitches. And I do it one at a time, so if you, at this point, if you're used to doing the sewing method for right now until we get this caught, just do one at a time. And this is a light linen, so I can actually see that I'm catching that. Sometimes I'll even drag my needle just to make sure I've got it under there. I don't want to catch it. Actually, I'm going to come up this way. And I will keep stitching until I get close to this knot, and then I will cut it away. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit closer so you can see. I think I did 3 stitches right there, over 3. So basically what you're doing is catching that thread. I'm going to try to keep my fingers out of the way so the camera will stay focused. And I'll go down, and when I get closer to this knot, then what I do is I'm going to just kind of gently pull it. I'm going to slip my scissors. Remember, you want to see both parts of the blade so you're not catching your linen. And cut that away. That's why it's called a waist knot. And now all of those threads will have caught your starting point. So that's how you can start on linen. It's called a waist knot. That's one of the ways. In another video, we'll look at some alternate methods. But I hope you've enjoyed that little tutorial on, let me get my paper and show you, on the waist knot. I hope you enjoyed that little tutorial about how to use a waist knot, and that's one of my go-to how to start when I'm stitching on linen, especially if you're stitching with nothing around it. Once you get going, you can slide your start underneath the back, but especially when you're starting out, where are you going to put it? So knowing how to do a waist knot is extremely helpful. So I'm just looking here at my notes, and I was meeting with my little local stitch group a couple weeks ago. I think it was after I taped the last time, but there's just 5 or 6 of us that met years ago. We were in a quilting guild together, still quilting, now returning to cross stitch. And we decided just to meet once a month at a local coffee shop. And the question, I'll get to the question in a minute, but I think it's difficult when you're stitching at home alone and you want to find a group, and how do you do it? And I mentioned last time, you can search on Facebook and see if there's anything local to you. But another idea is call your local library and find out if there are any stitching groups that meet using the library meeting room, because often there are, and they might be able to help you get in contact with someone. So that's an idea how to meet up with some stitchers in your area, or if you know some people that maybe have returned to cross stitch, suggest meeting once a month just to sit and stitch together. And who knows, you might end up meeting every other week or even weekly, just depending on your schedule. So was with the gals at my stitch group, and one of the questions was on a reproduction sampler, how do you handle the name? You're doing a sampler, it has the maker's name on it because it's reproduction. What do? Do you put your name in it? Do you leave their name in it? Do you add your name in it? And the answer is, at least from what I have read, is it depends. It depends on if you are doing a true reproduction, you will probably reproduce it just like it's done on the sampler. Now you can also personalize it. If you want to keep it true to the reproduction, you could, in the margin, stitch your name and the year that you did it. So that would be a way to keep the reproduction authentic, but then putting your name and the year it was completed, or maybe the years that it took to stitch it, in the margin, where it's not seen until it's taken out of the frame. So that's one option. What I did on Harriet Salt, or what I am doing, is I will probably put Harriet's name, just like it has, but I am personalizing it by using our initials in a different color. So that's another option. Some people go ahead and put their name and the year that they did it right on the sampler. So that's going to be how you want to do it. Some other people will do it true to the reproduction, but then maybe put a maker's mark on there, meaning a little motif somewhere, well, probably at the bottom, but just somewhere in the margin there that's still seen, but a little maker's mark denoting that you did it. So there are several options. So it's not a definitive, have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. It's personal choice, except if you want a true reproduction, then you will do it just like the sampler. So it just depends on what your goal is on that. So I think I have covered those things. So what I'm going to show you next is I have some whips. I have a new start. I have a finish. And then we're going to end, at the end of the video, I'm going to insert a new linen conversion using some of the linens that I purchased at Cecilia's and matching it with some of the other linens I have on hand, just so if the pattern calls, let's say for Lakeside, and you don't have Lakeside and you can't find Lakeside, what can you use instead? So I'll put that at the end, but let's look at, should I show? You know, you have everything organized. Where's my finish? Oh, behind me. Seriously, you would think I'd be organized. I was. I do have a finish. It is, ta-da, Quaker Dwelling. Finally, I started it in September soiree, sampler soiree, September 1st. Last year, and I worked on many other things in between, but it is done. It is done on weeks 36 count Havana, and I didn't take it to the framer yet because I wanted to show you, and then I'll be taking it to the framer. But here it is, Quaker Dwelling on Havana. Look at that little bit of light blue in there with the bird and the flower. Oh, just love this. So there it is. I finished it not too long after my last floss tube. So I wanted to show you that. And before I forget, do you remember last video we had a winner to our drawing, but that winner has not claimed her prize yet. So Brooke Sellers, please put in your comment, hey, I'm here, or email me with your mailing address. You won Feast of Friendship. So this is, you'll see this on July 1st, FlossTube 16. If this is not claimed by the next FlossTube, I'll be drawing a new name. So Brooke, please watch this and claim your prize, or it will be going to the next person on the list. And I had one more thing I wanted to show you that was on the case back there, the cabinet, that you might have seen and wondered what it was. This is a salt shaker that I found at a vintage store. I don't think it's a real antique. I just liked how it looked. And what I have in here, I put orts, but what I mainly use it for is when my needle is bent or maybe the eye is broken, I slip it down in here so there are needles that will no longer be used in there. So now I know where they are, they're safe, and then when I finally get done with them, if I'm going to be going somewhere where I can put them in a sharps container, I'll do that. Either that or I'll wrap it up in tape or something so it won't puncture anything. But I just put these little counting pins in it, have it set on top of my DMC cabinet. So I wanted to share that with you. I do have, where's my notes? 2 things that I worked on. And this one, I thought I was gonna get it done, and then I got distracted and went squirrel and started on something else. So this is almost done. This you saw this last time, the drawn thread stars. And this is done on 32 count Lugana Stormy Sky. And what I really love about this is I'm using silk on it, but I didn't have to use 2 strands. I'm using Dinky Dye, which is a little bit thicker. And look at the coverage. It's beautiful on 32 count. And that's what the pattern called for. And it's beautiful. So here it is. We've got, I think, just the specialty stitches to add in. Where are some? You can see some of the stars. I just need to add those in, but the rest of the stitching is done. And oh, let me move that needle minder. I think I've gotten, oh, I just noticed I have some leaves. I didn't finish some of the leaves. But look at that little village. I love that. Yeah, I've got some leaves to finish, not too many, and some specialty stitches. So that one I thought I was going to get done. And you know how it goes. I did a new start because I had to finish. And I just thought, I'm going to start something just because I can. And I did have somebody ask me, don't you work on just one thing? And that's personal choice again, because when I did Humming of the Bees, which is right up over there behind me, I was pretty monogamous on that. I just worked on it because I loved it. I felt like it. I just kept going. But sometimes I want to work on something else, and that's okay too. And that's why I told him, I said, sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't, and it just depends on what I feel like, and that's okay. Because we're all different, and we all enjoy doing it. And like I said, sometimes I feel like working on one thing, sometimes I want to switch, and sometimes I can't wait to start on something else, so I just go with it. Now, I also started, it probably was right before the last FlossTube, started on the Hannah Campbell Stitch Along, which this is being done with the group on Facebook. Kathy Ray, I think, is part of one of the leaders on that. I think there are several other people as well. Sherry is the one leading it, actually, I think. But Kathy has done a video with Nicola about it. It's divided up into 15 months, so I finished month 1. I have ordered some Surfine for the over 1, which hasn't come in yet, which month 2 is going to be in here where some of the over 1 is. So I'll probably just come on down in here and work on some more of the border until it comes in, which it should be in the next couple weeks. So this is being done, where's my book? It's done on 46 count, and I don't remember. This is what's really nice about having the Book of Days. I put my starts on here. 46 count, just the ticket using 103, and the silk pack is from Hoop and Needle. So I got month 1 done, just about. And like I said, I'll probably work on some more of the border till the Surfine comes in and I can start on the over 1. A little bit nervous about that, and I don't know why. I know it'll just take a little longer, and I'll just do a little bit, and then I'll go back to the over 2. But it's just such a vibrant sampler. And if you're doing the border, you can say I have 2 needle minders. That's because I'm alternating as I'm doing the colors. It's just a little easier for me to do it that way so I don't miscount. So I do have 2 needles actually threaded with the 2 different colors there. So I worked on Hannah Campbell. Is it 1838? Yes, that's an Irish sampler. And then I had posted on Instagram, what should I start next? So I posted 3 things. It's right here, I posted, and I had them all kitted. So I wasn't sure what to do first. So I had Live on Little, had that kitted. And I actually kitted that last summer and never started it. So I had that. I had Mary Ann Cup, 1839. And I had, and that's by Brenda Juvet. And I had by Blackbird, Oh Joyous Day. So I showed them what and said, what should I start? Well, what one did I start? I decided to start, probably because it just felt like a good summer stitch. Live on Little by Plum Street. So I'll show you where I'm at, and I'm doing this on 40 count Lakeside Linen Vintage Maritime White. Just pulling the threads. Of course, I dropped them on my lap. While I was taking a break, showing you the other video, I picked up all the threads I dropped on the floor. One even ended up in the trash can. You know, when you're going to do something, do it well. So I pulled everything out. Thankfully, nothing was in the trash can except a few threads, so it was fine. So the colors, I'm using DMC and also using some Weeks and some classic color works. Here they are. They're beautiful. And there are two colors that I was debating about because they're used on the little church right there. And on the linen I chose, they blended in. So I'll show you what I switched them to, and I'll show you how I decided. But let me show you where I'm at with Live on Little, and you'll laugh because I started on the border and I wormed my way around, so did a few words and went right to the house. I just love houses, so here it is. This one I did not iron because I just took it out of the hoop, and I just noticed I have to take that out because I did it in the wrong color. I was outline stitching, let me go to this. I was outline stitching the windows, and I went over to finish the rest of the roof, and then I realized the roof was a different color. So I'm gonna take that little bit out. And here we go. So this is just so pretty and so much fun. This will get filled in. I'm kind of leaving this because it's good for when I'm sitting and talking. So yeah, that little bit will come out. But what I changed this to is, you'll notice there's a lighter and a darker side of it. I changed it to Lexington Green for the lighter and Pebble Beach for the darker. And the reason I did that is because here's the ones that were used. And it's because of the linen that I chose. This is DMC 644 and DMC 822. I was concerned that this would blend in too much. So one of the hints I can tell you that I find helpful for myself when I do a floss toss, and that just means, you know, putting the flosses out, checking them. First, I lay them out and see, you know, do I like everything on the linen I chose? But then I get a little bit more specific, which I did here. I laid it out, but the problem is if I'm making a decision with all the threads there, when I'm stitching, I'm not stitching with a big bunch like that. I'm stitching with individual floss strands. So I was in question about this. So to double check to see, is it going to blend in or is it going to show too much? I actually pull one of the strands. And I do this with quilting too. If I'm trying to decide on the quilting thread, I'll pull it or lay it out in kind of a design that I'm thinking about and then step back a step or so to check it. So the same thing here. Now what I've done is I've pulled one strand. It blends in. You see that? I knew it would blend in too much, so that was the lighter one. So I thought, well, I could get rid of the lighter one and use this, which is 644, use this darker as the lighter. So let me do the same thing. Just take one strand. I thought it was still too close. So that's why I changed, and I'm going to lay them out so you can see them. So that's how when I do, say, a floss toss, that's how I finesse it. I take the one strand and check it. So here I'm going to lay what was called for and what I switched to. And I just went to my different flosses I had on hand and pulled some I thought I would like. There we go. So yes, it's going to be a little bit darker, but even though this little church is going to be a church, looks really big next to the really big house, it's not going to be very big. So I did want it to kind of stand out a little bit. So it is right there. Let me get, you know what, let's just take it out of the plastic. So there's a little church. You can see there's going to be a lot happening here. So I wanted that to stand out, and I was just afraid on the linen I chose that it would blend in a little bit too much. So that's how I do it. Pull that one strand and check it. And then I'm pretty happy with it, other than I have to take that one little bit out. But let me see. I think that might be it. I think it is. Am I going to do another start? I don't know. What am I going to work on for the next 2 weeks? Well, I have here it is, the Hannah Campbell that I will stay caught up. So I'll be working on another section of that. And I'll work on Live on Little, especially, you know, it's holiday weekend this weekend with the 4th of July on, what is it, Tuesday. This just feels like a great summer thing to work on. So I'll probably be working on that. I don't know if I'll start one of these, Marianne Kopp or Oh Joyous Day. I'm not sure. And I might go back and finish what I have left on stars, because there's not much. So I don't know. It will just depend on how I feel. Which I just love that little village. I just love it. So it will just depend on how I feel. But what we're going to finish with is, I'm just, again, checking my notes. I feel like I'm so disorganized today. But I had a lot to share with you and several extra videos, so I think that's why. So I think that's it. And what I'm going to share with you next is the linen comparison. And I laid down what we're going to look at in the other room. But we're going to look at several lakesides and an R&R. So you can see what I found in my stash that is similar to it. So it'll be a good conversion. If you can't find one of them, you can see what to put with it. So I hope you enjoy that video. It's coming up as soon as I sign off here. And I think that's it. I'll be back in 2 or 3 weeks, just depending on how much canning I have to do in the next couple of weeks. Might be 3 weeks if I'm covered up in tomatoes. And it could be 2 if the tomatoes aren't in yet. It just depends. So as always, I want to thank you for joining me. It's a joy to be with you. I love reading your comments. Thank you for those. And please feel free to comment, ask me anything if I don't know. I'll try to find an answer, but I do really enjoy your comments, and I'm honored that you have chosen to be part of this little video series. So enjoy the linen comparison coming up next. And until next time, happy stitching and be well. I thought I would do another linen comparison for you. Some of these linens I've picked up when I was at Cecilia's several weeks ago, and a couple I had in the stash and hadn't shown you. But this, for reference, is Vintage Country Mocha. And I thought we would use that as a reference when I was showing you the linens, since I think this is probably one of the easier linens to get a hold of. This one is 25 count, and I just wanted to show you. This one is 40. You can see they're a little different, pretty close, but this one a little bit different. So we'll stick with the 40 count because I think that's mostly what I'm going to be showing you today. So when I lay this down, that will be to help you see the comparison. So let's start with this one I had but had not shown. This is Tabby Cat, Just the Ticket, and I've got this on a gray cutting mat, just flipped over my OmniGrid mat, just flipped it over. Hopefully the colors, I think, are showing up pretty well. So this is Tabby Cat, Just the Ticket, and some of the linens that I have found are comparable. And the reason I'm doing this is because often certain colors are suggested and they might be difficult to get a hold of. So I've found some that work similarly, and I'm not saying I have all the answers, but just from some of the things I have in my stash. So this is Fiber on a Whim Milk and Honey, which is just a little bit lighter. It's showing a little lighter than it really is. But for comparison, and this is interesting, here's our Vintage Country Mocha. And this actually would be a pretty good substitute for Just the Ticket if you couldn't get Just the Ticket. So, Fiber on a Whim, Milk and Honey. Okay. You'll have to bear with me because I don't want to mix these up. Here's another one that I found that is similar, a little bit lighter. This is Fiber on a Whim Latte. You can see it's a little bit lighter, a little bit more yellow. Here's our Vintage Country Mocha, so you can see. That one actually might work. I'm going to move this over to one of our other examples. And then this one is Zweigart Light Mushroom. That is pretty close, and here is Vintage Country Mocha. You can see, pretty close. Light Mushroom, Just the Ticket, Vintage Country Mocha. So that gives you some options there. Okay, let me make sure I've got these labeled so I don't mix them up. Here's another one that I purchased. This one at Cecilia's. This is Lakeside Sand Dune. Here's a reference to Vintage Country Mocha. You can see this is a little bit more, it's a red-brown, a little bit more red-brown. Here's our Vintage Country Mocha, so you can see the difference. This one is Weeks Dye Works Cappuccino. Pretty good substitute. So this one is Sand Dune. This one is Weeks Dye Works Cappuccino. So pretty good. Match there. This one's a little darker. Here's our Vintage Country Mocha. That one actually is really good, because I know Sand Dune's hard to find, and if those of you are doing, no, I just forgot the one I was going to show you later, uses Sand Dune. I'll think of it probably when we go to the next linen. And this one is also, it's a little darker, but this is Fiber on a Whim Old Gold. You can see the difference there. Here's our Vintage Country Mocha. So this one's a little darker, a little bit more golden, but a good substitute for our Lakeside Linen Sand Dune. Let's go over. This is vintage, this is Lakeside Vintage Maritime White. Actually, I found this when I had kitted it when I was pulling out Live on Little, which was fun. I'd forgotten I had this. So this substitute is ACCES Commodities Russian Tea Cake. Let's move this down just a tad. So that's a pretty good substitute. Here's our Vintage Country Mocha. I'm going to fold this back again. It's a little distracting to see the whole thing, I think. At least for me as I'm showing you. Okay, Russian Tea Cake, a little bit more yellow, but could be a good substitute. Here's another one I found. This is Fiber on a Whim Milk and Honey. I think we looked at that one before. That's a good substitute for Maritime White. And here's our Vintage Country Mocha, so you can see the difference. These are quite a bit lighter. And here's another Fiber on a Whim Cream and Sugar. This has got a little bit more yellow. But again, a good substitute for the Maritime White. This one is, I think it's Fiber on a Whim Winter Moon. Now this is quite a bit more yellow. But this one's showing up a little bit more tan, but could be a good substitute. A little bit more yellow, but could work. And this one is Cream Lugana. Pretty good substitute there. And let me just lay down again the Vintage Country Mocha so you can see the difference and see how light this is. So this one is Maritime White. And somewhere I have already lost my ACCES Commodities. Hopefully I'll find it when I sort through. That's my fear. I don't want to mix these up. Some are labeled, some are not. Okay, this is Lakeside, and this one is Vintage Light Exemplar. And let me just put the Vintage Country Mocha, this little bit darker, but could be a substitute. This one I thought was good. This is Fiber on a Whim Latte. This is a little lighter, but a little bit more yellow, but could be a substitute for the Vintage Light Exemplar. Now you can see it is quite a bit more yellow. Let me show you another one. This is R&R Espresso. But that's a little bit darker, but good substitution for Vintage Light Exemplar. I'll just put the Vintage Country Mocha there so you can see. And one more. This is XJU Designs Light Hazelnut. Now this one is a little bit more golden, but could be a good substitute. And we'll just put the Vintage Country Mocha there. It's actually a really good substitute with the Vintage Country Mocha. All right. Keep these together. Got a couple more to show you. This one is Vintage Homespun. This is 40 count. This is Lakeside. And here's our Vintage Country Mocha. You can see quite buttery. Kind of think of the color you would see in, if you're making your own butter, you see those bits of cream or butter bits in the cream. This one is also Vintage Homespun. This is 40 count. This is 32. You see a little bit different, but pretty close. So the thread count size does affect the color. Now this is our vintage homespun. This one is Flaxen Needle Pemberley. Really good substitute there. So there's our vintage country mocha. You can see how not golden, the color of cream, maybe, buttery cream. And this is Fox and Rabbit Hog Bristle. Another good substitute for vintage homespun. This is a little bit more brown. See there, but a good substitute. I think I've gone through my substitutes, but I did want to, or comparisons, I did want to show you. I had someone ask about blue linen. Actually, what do I have here? No, I'm sorry, I have one more. This is Lakeside Navy Bean, which is kind of it's gorgeous color. It's got a little bit of gray blue in it. And so here's our vintage country mocha, so you can see the difference. Let me get that down there. Some substitutes. This is R&R Barb's Blend. Would be a great substitute. Let me move it here. There's our vintage country mocha. And one more, Silver Moon by Zweigart. It's a little bit more white, but it does have that little bit of gray feel. And let's just put the vintage country mocha one more time. So I hope that's helped you. We just looked at vintage homespun, sand dune, vintage maritime white, navy bean, and vintage light exemplar by Lakeside, and Just the Ticket by Tabby Cat. I'm going to leave the camera set up here, and I want to show you one more option that someone had a question about. Now, I'll be right back. Kim had a question about blue linen, if I had any examples. And I looked, and I really only have one that's a blue, but I have a few that are blue-gray or maybe a little blue-green. So this one is Star Sapphire. I've had this a long time, so I don't even know if it's still available, but that's the only blue I have. So you can see with the vintage country mocha, it's not sky blue, but I have that one. And this one, you'll see in today's episode, depending on where I put this video, you may have already seen it, something I'm working on Stormy Night, which that is kind of a blue-gray. So that's another option if you're looking for blue-gray, Stormy Night. This one is beautiful and interesting. This one is Surfine Regency. Now, I'm going to put that Stormy Night down. You can see this is a little bit more green, but it's a gorgeous piece. So that one's a little bit more green, blue-green. Then I have a couple that are gray. This one is XJU Little Dove, but it could work if you're looking for a blue-gray. So this is a gray cutting mat, you can see. This one's a little bit more gray. This is My Little Dove. Let's just lay the vintage country mocha so you can see. Beautiful piece. And then I picked up This one I was at the attic. This is Petoskey Stone by Needle and Flax. Lots of gray and a little bit of pale blue in there. It's showing up a little more mottled than it is in person. You can see how much lighter it is than my little dove. And one more. This one I just got as part of the club. The Fox and Rabbit Linen Club. This one is Flannel Flower, but it is gorgeous. It's got a little bit of blue-gray in it with kind of a yellowy background, but not really yellow. Not tan. There's vintage country mocha next to it. So that's another one that's, think of flannel, but it's got that little bit of, it's so hard to get the color on here, but I think you can see that. That's pretty good representation right there. There's a stormy night. So I hope that helped, Kim. I don't have a lot of things that are blue, but those are some I found that do have some blue in them.